Thank you and welcome to the Wells Fargo team. Hopefully you've all met me by now. Kirsten Newcomer, Director of OpenShift Product Management. I often focus on security as well. So the Wells Fargo team is here to talk with us about accelerating AI and ML workloads in the financial industry. And I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. Sean?
Hi, my name is Sean Bradley. Been working in IT for a little over 20 years across education, healthcare, and lastly, finance.
Kamran Aranzad, principal engineer at Wells Fargo. Been doing Kubernetes at enterprise for like 10 years.
Good afternoon, Vip Patel. Been working in the financial services industry for about 18 years in various roles, latest being specializing in AI.
Vip, if I can start with you, how is the financial industry solving customer problems with the use of AI, both, and has that changed more recently as Gen AI has become particularly popular?
It certainly has. There's many use cases for AI as most organizations are just starting to begin their journeys into AI. Right, most large organizations have started their journey by just doing normal customer service type activities, right? So think about HR activities. If you want to ask a simple question, instead of picking up a phone and calling your HR rep, you can ask a question to a chatbot, right? And hopefully get that answer back relatively quickly versus having to wait, right? And other things like, I'm sure we've all called IT support at some point or another, right? Today you start out with asking it a question, and based upon that response, it can direct you in one way or the other. But again, it's not waiting on a phone; it's giving us that instant answer, hopefully, to solve your problem. And then more financial specific use cases for AI. One is fraud detection and risk management, right? So a lot of financial services companies are basically like they have your data, like let's be real, right? So they know what your spending habits are, and if you kind of go out of the norm, right, you get flagged. You'll get a phone call or a text message, and if you don't, think about switching your financial services provider because they should be doing that for you. So that's one use case. Other use cases are just loan originations and and risk management there, right? So a lot of times, again, like you'll fill in your information and, they'll come back and they'll, either approve you, but most companies these days are not necessarily relying just on that, right? Because it is relatively new, right? So they're using it more as a tool. So you're still talking to a banker or a financial representative, and it just helps guide them on whether they should approve you for a home loan or a personal loan or whatever it may be, right? So there's that. Then there's just when it comes to trading, right? A lot of times you can go in and you can put in your risk profile, and based upon your risk profile, it'll do that analysis for you and give you a suggestion. Again, just suggestions at this point on items that you can invest in. So there's lots of use cases that the financial industry is really looking to explore. I would say they're not all completely relying on AI at this point. They're using it more as a tool. That will evolve as we get more data, we learn more, and basically just do a study of what the outcomes are.
Thank you. And I have to agree with the comments about if you're not getting fraud alerts, you might want a different credit card provider. I personally have benefited from fraud alerts on my credit cards. I know in the EU there are different rules about data sharing, et cetera, but I've certainly found that helpful. And I think, hey, if you can get faster loan approvals, that could be a win. So, Sean, could you tell us something about the tools that you've been using, how OpenShift helps to build the AI platform, and what particular features have been useful for building the AI/ML platform with OpenShift?
Absolutely. So, I feel like it's a two-part answer just because you have Kubernetes itself, which is a pretty steep learning curve, right? Um, but with OpenShift as a product that you can purchase, you really get out of the box all of the enterprise features, ease of deployment, authentication, logging, observability. But then the second piece of that is the ecosystem of operators that can extend the platform for, say, like an AI ML environment. For example, Red Hat also has OpenShift AI, which allows you to add data science pipelines, Jupyter notebooks, everything that a data scientist would need to get started with their AI ML journey out of the box.
Great, thanks. Has it been helpful that you can leverage kind of the same Kubernetes platform for AI-enabled apps as well as other types of applications that are being used?
I believe so, right? Especially from a process perspective, automation perspective, and then even operationally. So you already have an operations team that understands and can support enterprise-wide Kubernetes. Building another platform on that for AML, you can reuse all of that knowledge.
That's great, thank you. So Kamran, I know you started working with OpenShift 3. I forget which version exactly.
I think it was 3.2.
Or 3.6. I know 3.2. Maybe by the time I met you, it was 3.6. So Kamran and the team he was working with helped to drive, I want to share, upstream, helped us at Red Hat to work with the upstream on the ability to encrypt sensitive data in etcd, actually. So.
Yeah, I think a long journey since then.
It
A lot
was.
of new tools that definitely, I think, a few have been spoke about already in the industry, right? ACM, generally GitOps. I don't think there was much of that. Back at that point, there was a lot more Ansible, right, and a little bit less, I guess, declarative. So a lot of the tools that we see being used in the industry, ACS, ACM, things that might not be in ACS yet, in OPA, things that we use for our industry for compliance and controls, right? Part of the AI platforms that are being developed on OpenShift, you need a stable, I guess, base layer for these things, right? Policies, controls of your platform you don't want to have to worry about whenever you're trying to deploy your AI platforms or the application team way at the top, right? So we benefit, or the industry benefits from the flexibility and extensibility of Kubernetes, specifically OpenShift, and a lot of the tools in the Red Hat ecosystem that, I guess, integrate nicely with Red Hat's deployment, ACM, to make sure that we have the observability, the deployments of all the arbitrary YAMLs for compliance or policies or things like RBAC, token timeouts, whatever might be required for your PCI encryption, so on and so forth.
Yeah, and one of the things we've talked about previously is configuration drift and managing configuration across different flavors of clusters. Is that something you could elaborate on?
Yeah, so configuration drift, obviously GitOps, the declarative nature of that, knowing that what you provide in your source control will be actually out there in the environment across the fleet. I think that's really important to the industry. The reduction in overhead for operations teams, being able to actually reduce the number of headcount that might be necessary, or at least have a greater number of operators who are actually helping application teams or other services and not actually having to roll out all that configuration, right?
Cool, thank you. And I know one of the related pieces too is admission controls. Are you using admission controls across a range of the ecosystem products?
Yeah, I think like in the industry, you generally see a lot more admission controls being used, not only to help the platform with any sort of noisy neighbors. I think like the last talk they were talking about disruption budgets, which is actually really annoying for upgrades. So things like that, but also helping the application teams, protect them against themselves with replica sets, right? Okay, if you have one replica, you do an upgrade, okay, now you have some downtime. So you see a lot more of that in the industry because people sometimes forget that security is also operational readiness and risk, right?
Yeah, those are great comments. Vip, as you have been working on adoption of, or, kind of investing as the industry invests more in AI and ML-based applications, one of the things we often talk about at Red Hat when it comes to innovation is the reality that you have to work with people as well as new tools, but also sometimes new processes. So what are you seeing in terms of the additional personas that are involved when it comes to AI and ML applications?
Yeah, there's definitely new personas that are required when it comes to AI/ML applications. There are, our standard set of personas. Let's just take our infrastructure admin, for example. They handle the compute, storage, networking, typical things that we all have to deal with, really any platform. So we've got we've got our IT admin that typically takes care of those types of environments and those systems. And then on top of that, we've got our really our OpenShift or platform admins, right? They take care of the ecosystem from a platform perspective. So we've got OpenShift, we got PVs, we've got all the security and the compliance that Kamran just spoke about. They take care of that side of the house. And then specifically for the AI side of the house, right, we've got a combination of data scientists and data engineers, right? So when it comes to AI workloads, the data is extremely important, right? It's garbage in, garbage out, as most of us has probably heard, right? So the outcomes and the models that are created are only as good as the data that's being fed into it. So we have to have good data engineers to make sure that that data is cleansed, it's accurate, all the biases have been removed, and so those are the typical jobs of a data engineer. And then once that data is created, that's where the data scientists come in, right? So they take that data and they use it to train the models, do inferencing, create RAG models, do all of that wonderful stuff that they do to get the outcomes that we desire when it comes to AI.
It's great. And have you any suggestions or tips about how do you help some of these new individuals, new personas come on board or learn what they need to know about any new processes or working with the platform? It sounds like not all of them work with the platform, but some might.
Some do, some don't. But I think with most personas, it's all about communication, right? It's all about knowing what your requirements are and then communicating that to the different teams within the organization, right? Because without communication, the next team doesn't really know what they need to do, what they need to accomplish. So it's in large organizations, sometimes it's very hard, right? It's a challenge. So just making sure you're communicating your requirements and your needs to the appropriate teams, that's extremely helpful.
That's great, thanks. So we're kind of leaving some room for some questions, but before we get to that, maybe we can go in order down the row and see what final thoughts you might want to share. Sean, any key takeaways or things you really would like our peers here in the audience to know?
Yeah, I guess like the listening to Vip and then the previous speakers, right? The ability of OpenShift, and not even just OpenShift, but just using things like GitOps and Kubernetes, and then having that enterprise support from OpenShift, and then being able to swap components in and out as your needs change quickly, right? So and then also like getting people on board, setting the correct example at a platform level of how we're, start out doing the right things, and they can see, oh, platform team's doing this, it works well, why don't we try the same thing?
I guess to kind of continue on the same idea of what the question initially spoke about was OpenShift, Red Hat, like the support that's provided, not working on only this FSI, other FSIs, and being in the industry. knowing or having that confidence that, okay, vulnerabilities will be patched, bugs will be fixed, having a partner or vendor that is conscious of security, like I think SCCs, for instance, were Red Hat contribution to the upstream. So like that forward-looking security stance is really nice, helpful. Also the tooling is built around that, observability, auditability, things that, you know, not only for FSI, government, medical, right?
So when it comes to AI, I would say there's no need to reinvent the wheel, right? So if you look at a lot of the reference architectures like NVIDIA has created, their reference architecture dictates open source cube. And then you have to put your own controls around it. All the authentication pieces you got to go figure out, you know, so it's a lot of work. It's not easy. Using a product like OpenShift does the majority of the work for you, right? So again, why go reinvent the wheel, right? It's a fully supported product with AI. It gives you much faster time to market. You don't have to worry about managing and creating your own scripts and tooling and all of the other wonderful stuff that OpenShift gives you outside of the box, right? So definitely look into leveraging, you know, something like OpenShift. It has all the bits and pieces, including the operators that are required in order to run the models. So if you want to do it faster, I definitely would go down that route.
Thank you much.
Oh, actually, that reminded me, one more thought, operators. Really great, right? Like NVIDIA operator, being able to have any sort of drivers for the NVIDIA or OpenShift AI, Run AI, be able to distribute these through operators, be able to patch them quickly, operator lifecycle manager, all that kind of from an engineering perspective makes us look like wizards, be able to just move the fleet to a new version quickly, so.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. And really thank you to all of you here for the partnership, because we really do build these solutions in partnership with our community, your requirements, your goals, your needs. In some cases, your contributions to the code themselves really make a difference.